Pauper has ton of decks in it, and today I got 3 undefeated ones with the wildest cards on them, starting up with Mono Red Tron, a deck that relies on the package of Ursa Tower, Ursa's Mine and Ursa's Power Plant to generate tons of mana that can be used to cast spells such as Self-Assembler or even Oliphant that can fix us for red mana. Lightning Bolt, Fiery Cannonade and Rolling Thunder are the removals that will aim to keep the board clean for when we resolve our Monarch or cascade into our bigger threats, in an off-meta deck that has made a bunch of trophies during this year, and we'll see why now. First game we will be against Golgari Dredge. This not so popular Golgari version of the deck combines multiple elements like reanimation with Exhume, synergy between Arbol Elf and Utopia Sprawl, Avenging Hunter for the initiative, and last but not least, a Pseudo-Ponza team that will be extremely annoying for us to beat, as any Tron deck will not like to see it. And yeah, that is going to be a problem in this game, as this deck is a mana hungry, and 2 mana versus 5 is not where you want to be in any situation. I cycle my Oliphant to get more lands to play with, but having a 6 drop and 3 removal spells is not great news. To make matters worse, the opponent played an Annoy Altisar into a Troll of Khazad Dûm. Even though I 2-for-1 myself in an attempt to get back into the game, this is not a great spot to be in, as the opponent just untap and play an Avenging Hunter, and that was more than enough for me to scoop and move to game number 2. Against these kinds of deck, ours has no good cyber to bring in, so I ship it back. A turn 1 expedition map is great news, but if there's one thing I would love for this deck to have, it's some way to filter or colorless mana into red, as you can't realistically do much with a turn 3 natural Tron other than just casting a Filigree Familiar or a Self-Assembler. Nevertheless, this deck got undefeated for a reason, so the opponent better not sleep on it yet. I cheated into play a Troll that thanks to Exhume. In that case, I will be forced to 2-for-1 myself again by using Cannonade and a Lightning Bolt. At the end of the turn, I got rid of both their creatures and resolved a Commodore with removal backup to get the Monarch for myself. Still, it didn't last long as they untap and play a creature with a Monarch of their own, stealing it and drawing a card at the end of the turn. I cracked my Candy Trail to draw a card as well, and on my turn, I attacked to try to steal the Monarch naturally, but my creature met removal. Nevertheless, I cast a second Monarch creature and stole the emblem back while also playing another creature to protect the emblem in case the opponent found another removal. They untap, drew a couple more cards by cracking a Spellbomb and 2 Night Whispers, but decided to scoop after not finding removal, so we moved to game number 3. I knew I had to mulligan aggressively to find an answer for an early elf. The opponent played an Arbol Elf as expected, so we will kill it as soon as we get the opportunity. They play a second Arbor Elf and passed, and at the end of their turn, I cycled one of my Oliphants to fetch for a Mountain. The Volcanic Spike one of the elves and loot away the Familiar for a better card. They then untap and miss a land drop, meaning that this was the perfect opportunity to kill the second elf and loot away an Assembler for another Assembler. The opponent passes back the turn, and now I just play the map, search my tower, and play a Relic of Progenitus, in case they want to use Exhume at some point. The opponent then used removal for my land and ramping the process, and since we had nothing better to do on my turn, I just exile all graveyards, looting my relic for a card, and play a second one. They might seem to have the same idea as they play an Nihil Spellbomb of their own, and without a better plan, I decided to crack the relic for a land, finding a Tron piece. I then play my land immediately and used to cast Self-Assembler to retrieve the one that I sent to the bottom of my library. The opponent of course got rid of it, so I just play a Devouring Party on my turn that reveal an expedition map, and attack for 6. Still, they kill it with a Snuff Out, and on their turn they attack me for 1 and pass. I crack my map for a second Tron piece, and play a Commodore. However, I made the mistake of not killing the Arbor Elf on my turn. I say mistake as now they can untap for 7 mana, and cast an Annoy Altisar that reveal another elf. I shot the latter, and at least the good news is that I can now play a power plant to complete the Trinity of Lands. On my turn I play a Self-Assembler to fetch for a second one, and play it as well, killing the Arbor Elf this time in case they had a second Altisar in hand. Still, the opponent drew a card and scoop, giving us the win for this game. All That Glitters is one of the most broken Pauper cards. From Azorius Affinity to Jeskai versions, this card fits very well with creatures like Gingerbread or Ornithopter, that can deal tons of damage with derivation. And in this mono-white deck, there's no exception, as this budget version can truly pack a punch and steal some games. We keep a decent hand on the play and immediately start to apply pressure to what it seems to be Golgari Gardens. They use Duress to remove my blacksmith, and I untap to play back-to-back frogmites in an attempt to shorten the clock. They then play a land and pass, and after finding a second Gingerbrute, the opponent decided to kill one of my frogs, so I attack for 5 this turn. Opponent plays a land and pass, use removal once again on my creature as I play a Mirror Enforcer. What I don't like about this deck is the lack of card advantage it has, and while I can steal the Monarch with hasty Gingerbrutes, it's a good idea to attack with only one and Enforcer to pressure their life totals. We traded creatures and they lost the Monarch, and post-combat, I added a third Gingerbrute to the party to keep the momentum going. That said, the opponent did not find an answer to get back the Monarch and scooped. The Obsidian Acolytes will be huge to try and steal some wins. As other than that, this deck lacks the way to compete against the likes of Golgari Gardens in the late game. I started by playing an Inspector into an Ardent Recruit, but the latter Meta Defile. Then the opponent untapped to play a Gardens, and I attacked for 1 on my turn to play an Acolyte, risking myself to lose everything against a Drowning Sorrow. Still, if things survive, I can untap and play a Glitters on it to potentially win the game on the spot. The opponent removed one of my creatures, and back on my turn, I attacked for 4 with mine, and they decided to chump block. Not having a second land is hurting me a bit, but for now, it seems that they are struggling to find removal for my creatures. So at least we got that. They killed the Inspector, and I untapped playing 2 of my creatures, but made the mistake of overextending myself and not leaving a white mana open to protect them from removal. And while I dealt 8 damage to them, they proceeded to untap and wipe the board with a combination of Crypt Rats and Fighting Blade. From there, a few turns passed, and I struggled to keep a creature alive, so we moved to game number 3. We keep a decent hand with creatures and lands, and I will start by playing my Inspectors to pawn my Recruit later. Opponent got rid of my Blacksmith's Guild, so I play a second Inspector, the Elementalist, and attack for 1. They untap, playing a Titan Blade, so on my turn, I crack the clue, play a second Recruit, and pass back. I think I was too afraid of playing against the board wipe, so in this turn I just play a Might and passed. They then used a Deadly Dispute to draw some cards, kill one of my creatures with Defile, and a second one with Titan Blade, so at the end of the turn I crack a clue to draw a card. Back on my turn, I hit them for 5 and played 2 more creatures to turn on Metacraft. However, after playing a Lembas, the opponent found a Drowning Sorrow and wiped my board, as losing an artifact creature meant that the Recruit lost the buff. Regardless, I will just play a Valskirch, waiting until I can find an Acolyte to put the Glitters on it. Opponent passes back the turn to me, and now I found the Acolyte. I can play it to protect my creature, but they have removal ready for it. I will just pass the turn while my opponent gains 3 more lives. They then untap and found an Avenging Hunter, turning on the initiative for them. And as I lost hope, a hero emerged. Yup, Gingerbrute was hasty to take the initiative over, and I found a land in the process. Now the plan is to attach the Glitters to it, so it can start dealing unblockable damage to my opponent, who just made the mistake of dropping an Avenging Hunter first before attacking, as otherwise they could have advanced 1 more into the dungeon. They tried to kill the Gingerbrute, but I was able to protect it thanks to the Acolyte's ability. I attacked once more on my turn and put the counters from the dungeon ability onto the Acolyte. This way, if they found a second Drowning Sorrow, both creatures will survive, and I will be able to protect my Gingerbrute from spot removal. They played a Lembas and scooped after revealing the Drowning Sorrow. Golgari Dredge has been around since I covered it many times in this channel, but recently it's been getting trophies left and right in Pauper leagues, as cards like Mire Triton, Sadie Wayfinder, and Scrapwork Moth help us to fill the graveyard to later use Dread Return or Exhume post-sideboard to reanimate our big creatures, or our finisher Lottle Giant, in a deck that can kill your opponents in a blink of an eye. We will now be playing against Monred Turbo Initiative, which is somewhat of an unfavorable match, but we'll see how this deck performs. Being on the play is fine, but not much we can do against a turn 1 initiative on their end. They can try to put a creature into play to see if we can steal it, but as my opponent plays a land and passes, a lightning bolt quickly killed my creature. So I did not have many choices other than just fetching a red source to attack with haste next turn and pass. My opponent advances more into the dungeon. They eventually were able to play a synthesizer followed by a sticker goblin that reveals a second torch, which created another creature. With not much else to do, I untap and unearthed my Scamp for the graveyard so I could loot away the Acorn Harvest and also play a Mire Triton that luckily found a Stingwing Imp. Without many plays at our disposal, I proceeded to play the imp to block my creatures, use the flashback on my squirrels, and attack with the Triton to threaten them to steal the initiative. They block, and on their turn, attack for 11, so I was happy to trade my imp for one of their creatures. Still, another problem arose as the Crimson Fleet Commodore joined the party, and they now got the Monarch as well. The main plan now is to seal both emblems in the turn, and to do that I will attack with both my tokens at the expense of losing one. I found another land that will be useful in casting my creatures, and I will play my imp so it can block and add up to the creature count from my graveyard to cast a large nod to the bone. Unfortunately, I couldn't prevent them from stealing the emblems, but at least I lived to fight another turn. I untap and attack to steal the emblems once more, and put another imp into the board to repeat the same process we did the turn prior. This time, the opponent attacked with only 2 creatures to prevent me from stealing the emblems again, but after gaining some more life, it was just a matter of for me to keep filling the graveyard with creatures to kill them with the giant. Luckily for me, I found a second giant, so I returned the first with Dread Return, dealt 17 damage to them, flashback both squirrel tokens, and after seeing the writing on the wall, the opponent scooped. For our second game, 2 Moment's Peace is the only thing that I could bring to help improve the match. However, after they used back-to-back petals, the opponent managed to play a turn 1 Crimson Fleet Commodore to get the Monarch, to which I will only play a land, cycle a creature, and pass. Then they play a second one, hitting me for 7 this turn, and back on mine, I try to stabilize with a mod to discard my imp and return it to the hand to mill 6 cards from my library. Still, the opponent was eager to kill me, and they proceeded to cast Aqueduct Revolt and a Bushwhacker, which was enough to win the game, so we moved to the final. Being on the play is huge against these decks, as if you are 1 turn behind, you will likely lose the game, especially with a turn 1 emblem on their other side. Still, in this game, this was not the case, and I was happy to resolve a Wayfinder to reveal an imp, threatening an early giant kill. That being said, they play a Rite of Flame into Aqueduct Revolt and a Bushwhacker, dealing 6 damage this turn. Despite the appearances, this is not as bad as it looks. Now I can lure away my squirrels and put 2 into play next turn to trade for their tokens, and I also added an extra blocker to the board. Realizing this, the opponent scooped as they likely ran out of gas.